Excellent. I guess I will get going. So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I'm Tim Anderson, Director of Land and Water Bureau here at DATCP. I'd like to offer a few points before we get the presentation and discussion going today. First, DATCP doesn't want to dictate a program as much as we're looking to partner to develop and operate a new program. What I'm saying here is that we need your help to make this successful for everyone. I want to suggest that there are 3 areas in particular that we really need your help today. First, demand for this new program. Are we going to get enough farmers to sign up? Please think about ways in which we can work together to make that happen. At the very end today, I'm going to circle back to this question. The second thing I want to talk about a little bit is related to the first point. Is there a sense of urgency to get this program up and running ASAP? On the other hand, do we want it done well and done right? That's not to say we're going to get everything perfect this first year. So when we get to the next step slide, that's the second to last slide, please help us determine what timing will work for farmers and ag professionals. So these first 2 questions I want you to think about during the presentation today. And maybe the most obvious area in which we need your help is regarding the nitrogen study options themselves. So spoiler alert, we've primarily focused on the NUE studies and variations thereof so far. What questions would you like to see addressed and how that's going to come up? I'd encourage you to consider a diversity of locations and farm types, etc. So today, Dr. Matt Rourke is only with us for the first 30 minutes. So let's jump right into the meeting. I want to thank you in advance for your time. Today, Jennifer Amron-Heaton from DATCP and Dr. Matt Rourke from the UW are our presenters. So I'll hand it over to Jenny.
Okay, next slide, Alex. Okay, so we do have, we already started the welcome and introductions. For myself, my name is Jennifer Heaton-Amrine. I'm the section manager of our land resource management section here at DATCP. You may have had some interactions with staff and our programs. We provide cost sharing to county conservations. So that I can get you guys all set up on Tuesday. Somebody has their microphone on? Okay. We also run the CREP program and farmland preservation. So you may have had some interactions with our programs or our staff. I also would like Dr. Matt Rourke to introduce himself briefly.
Hi, I'm Matt Rourke. I'm a professor in the Department of Soil Science, as well as an extension specialist in nutrient management and soil fertility.
So for our agenda today, we're just going to go quickly over the background and what's happened so far with our commercial nitrogen optimization pilot program. We're going to have Matt talk about the research design options we're proposing and get some feedback from you on those, and then have some discussion, questions, and feedback on other elements of the program and go over some next steps. Next slide. Okay, so where are we? Where's this? We call it NOPP. That's how we're abbreviating the nitrogen optimization pilot program. Where have we been and where are we now? This idea for a nitrogen optimization program was recommended as both part of the water quality and climate change task forces way back in 2019. And this past March, Act 223 was passed that created this pilot program. It allows for grants up to $50,000 for agricultural producers. Up to 20% of each grant funds is designated to go to UW for monitoring of the projects, and the projects must be for at least 2 growing seasons. In addition to those parameters that were included in the statute, DATCP was directed to write an emergency rule, which we adopted July 8th, 2022. The emergency rule is DATCP 52, which also contains our producer-led rule. This past August 16th, the Joint Finance Committee awarded $1.6 million in funding for this program for this fiscal year. We had a public hearing on August 18th related to the emergency rule and got a few comments about things that we might want to consider for future rules. And then we're currently in the process of working on the RFP and application, meeting with our UW and other government partners, and then you as our stakeholders. And we're hoping to get this initial round of grants out in fall 2022, winter 2023. But again, that's a point of discussion for later about, is this the right timeline, or should we be looking at a different time frame? Just to refresh everybody on the NOPP purpose. The purpose of the nitrogen optimization grants is that agricultural producers will collaborate with the University of Wisconsin system scientists to conduct research projects that enhance understanding and refine new methods that optimize nitrogen applied to agricultural fields. So it really is focused on optimizing that nitrogen. The rule relates to commercial nitrogen in particular, the statute mentioned. Okay, next slide, Alex. One of our biggest partners is the University of Wisconsin. It's written into statute that they will be helping with the monitoring and other aspects of this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Matt Ruark for the next few slides, where he can talk about the role of UW and then what we're seeing as the preliminary design options for this first round of grants.
All right, so thank you. As we think about what's the role of UW? I mean, what's the role of us, our work at all? It's really to do, to provide that unbiased, independent lens through the process, right? So I think what we're interested in at UW-Madison is the ability to conduct more on-farm work, conduct more on-farm assessments of nitrogen use efficiency, and conduct more on-farm assessments of which management practices are going to either, one, improve nitrogen use efficiency, allowing us to maybe apply less nitrogen or get more nitrogen uptake, greater yield at the same nitrogen rates, or simply reduce nitrate loss, leaching losses. So and this was a team approach. I'm the one presenting here, but we had a lot of conversations among my colleagues. I can't see everyone online. I know Amber Raditz is online. Kevin Masaryk was there. Jamie Patton. I can't click through those, but there was a lot of us that spent a lot of time having discussions about it and figuring out how this can work. So some of this premise too is that as we need to expand our data and our data sets, and I'm sure a lot of people in the room have seen presentations where we, here's one site where we did a nitrogen rate study and, maybe it's following cover crops or not. Okay, well, how many cover crop rate studies can I do in 1 year? And so over time, yes, it builds up, but still not that many soil types are represented in these data sets when we're evaluating these practices. Okay, so as you, we could flip to the next slide. So we came up with this idea of 3 potential research options, and Jennifer, were these shared then with the group as well with that PDF?
I don't think they have seen these.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So the idea is, well, so phase 1 option A. I'll keep the terminology the same. Option A would be more basic nitrogen rate studies. So as we continue to build these data sets that are used to guide our nitrogen fertilizer recommendations, we utilize these nitrogen rate studies that also need to have a zero nitrogen as part of the study, and we can use that to then identify optimal nitrogen rates and to calculate basically how much nitrogen was used by the crop and maybe in the implications towards water quality based on that specific site. The other big things with option A are that you'd also want to provide all the information about your management practices that occurred on your field. So you're basically doing your own on-farm assessment of your nitrogen what's your optimal nitrogen rate and what is your nitrogen use efficiency. And this information would be very important for that specific field in your farm, as well as contribute to the broader database to guide fertilizer recommendations. Option B then gets into more of, well, what other practices would you want to do, or would you be interested in studying to reduce the amount of N that you had to apply or increase the amount of nitrogen that was taken up by the plant. And so these are things, cover crop, cover crops are a common one, very popular one people are studying, altering manure timing, additives to manure, additives to fertilizer like nitrification inhibitors, other products that you may apply to the soil. So whatever you'd want to study, I mean, even just changing a tillage operation, changing placement, all those things that we consider like the 4 R's, those could be studied. And you can imagine, you can think of all the combinations of things you could study and even potential interactions with it if you wanted to study cover crops with manure or something like that. And then option C would be some sort of advanced innovative product, but that would be for those really experienced with doing on-farm research. So I have a couple extra slides. If you want to flip to the next slide, we do have a couple resources that are available. One is we do have a resource available that talks about how to conduct your own nitrogen use efficiency assessment. And we really are promoting that use of a 0 nitrogen strip and the value of that. And that goes in, that's in that document that's through our UW Discovery Farms program. And then on the right is just a picture, an aerial picture of a nitrogen rate study that I've been conducting on farm in Walworth County. And you can see you need quite a few different, a lot of rates. So if you're looking at assessing your optimal N rate, you need a lot of rates in nitrogen. And just to get that, so you can do the proper statistics to know really where your yield was maximized with the amount of N. And so it does require a little bit of, on our level, it does require a little bit of management in field. We have to cut out alleyways because we use a small plot combine. But if you go to the next slide, really the next phase is to have that better engagement with cooperatives, with crop consultants that can have the ability to vary nitrogen on the fly. And this is a picture from a colleague of mine at Iowa State University, and working sort of at this model working with the fertilizer applicators, where they can vary the nitrogen rates as it goes through the field. And then they can just simply, they know they've got everything, everything is obviously geo-referenced. Then you can also go through harvest corn with your combine, utilize your yield monitor data, and you can use that information to put together your nitrogen response curves. So instead of setting out small plot work, where I have to, we got to haul a small plot combine from site to site, trying to figure out ways we can utilize technology and utilize these variable rate applicators and, yield monitors to rapidly increase our data set. And so this is the kind of stuff that we really would like to promote, something that's less invasive for the farmer. We don't have to go out there. We're not cutting out alleys and stuff like that. Something can be done on the fly, and there's no issues. It doesn't create any problems for the farmer, other than maybe lowering yields, obviously, with the 0 nitrogen. So then then the next slide then is say, okay, we have that nitrogen, the nitrogen rate trials, but really it might be more interesting to study that something else, right? And so I've done a lot of work with that something else, working with farmers, is cover crops. So you can see a picture here where you have a cover crop or no cover, you have strips of cover crop and a strip without cover crop. This is very, the farmers are doing this, very easy for them to do. Put out the strip, or it's usually they are cover cropping and they're just skipping a strip, and then putting those nitrogen rates on top of it. So that's kind of that second level. Now, you don't have to do in our recommendation to go to a full nitrogen rate study, may not be necessary. If you want to start with the idea of you want to study first, you want to study the effect of cover crops or whatever that might be, right? It's whatever management practice that you are the most interested in. There we're recommending that you need to have at least 2, ideally 3 nitrogen rates in that sort of setup. So you'd have your standard rate perhaps a reduced rate, and then perhaps it's zero. So you can cut back on rates if you're not as interested in studying the actual nitrogen response as you would be just sort of a bigger evaluation of, do I need to apply a little more nitrogen? Do I need to apply a little less nitrogen following a certain management practice? As we move forward, we do have a PDF, and I don't know, maybe I don't know at what level of editing that is, and I'll kick that back to DATCP to send information out on all these details. And some of our role then would be to work with every individual grant recipient to ensure like a standard protocols are in place, all the data that needs to be collected is in place, and then we can help, as necessary through the process.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And before we get to the discussion questions, we do have a draft RFP that Tim will talk about at the end that we will be sharing to get some comments from people if the more detailed written explanation makes sense or not. So you will be seeing that.
Very good.
Alex, if you want to go to the next slide. So we at DATCP are super grateful to be partnering with Matt and his team and others at UW. We're really going to be leaning on them as the technical and scientific experts for this grant program. And after we have this time for discussion questions, we have a Matt for about 15 more minutes. You may hear us throughout the rest of this presentation say, that's a great question. We'll have to contact Matt or UW for an answer after he leaves. But for now, we would like to open the floor to everyone and get some feedback about our research design options. Are they understandable? Are they adequate? Are they feasible? Are there other options we should include? And are there other thoughts about research designs that maybe we haven't included here? If you could raise your hand if you would like to ask a question or provide some input, or even type it in the chat, we will call on you. And I see Steve has a hand raised. So Steve Hoffman, would you like to speak?
Yeah, so I think that's all really understandable and feasible, what we've heard so far. My question would be, if it would be a dairy farm with manure or any kind of livestock farm, would that automatically put you in the scenario of option B, or would that be option A?
Matt, would you like to take that?
Yeah, Steve, I think that really would be up to you. I see you could do either, or if you have the ability to do that combination, right? Pick that practice and then do the full N rate study, right? We don't want to take that off the table for those that have the capacity to do that. So you could do both.
Okay.
Bob Welch.
Thank you. So first of all, I don't know that manure is eligible. It's commercial nitrogen fertilizer that we're studying. Second of all, I think this is fine because you have C, which is innovative. So that would be like everything else. So I think, yeah, you've got it covered that way. But what our farmers, I think, really need is a list of all the collaborators, and maybe those collaborators want to put a little note, like things that they're particularly interested in or where they operate out of, because maybe location makes it easier for people. Because we got farmers that have an interest, but they don't know how to connect that dot. And I think if we just say, call Amber, call Matt, call so-and-so, and then they can start to do that outreach, or we can help connect our members too. Because I think we have a lot of people that have an idea, but they don't know how to get from here to there. And that's where the UW people, I think, have their value. And if we don't connect them, they're not going to get connected. So that's really important.
Great comment. Thank you, Bob. Jordan.
Hi there. Yes, thank you for doing this. My question is under the research design options, is there room to do replicated trials at multiple locations? So you could have 4 different farmers apply for a grant and there are 4 different locations, but they're growing similar crops, but then the research collaboration is testing sort of the same thing at 4 different farms. So you have replicated trials running at the same time. So we, like you do what Matt was talking about, where you're generating more data that's useful when compared to each other.
I would,
Matt,
I
maybe
mean,
you want to answer that. I would think that would be fine. We were actually talking about that, but Matt, would you like to comment?
yeah, and also too, on top of that, we are recommending a minimum of 3 replications for every level of treatment at each location. So replicating that additionally over sites is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to make a comment on the manure. I think the manure is interesting, right? Because there's usually, I mean, if there's no extra fertilizer on top of manure that's applied, that's, I suppose that wouldn't count. But I'm thinking about scenarios where manure is applied and then additional inorganic nitrogen or commercial fertilizer is applied, and the rates that are needed on that. So I do see that as the way that manure fits into some of these research ideas, on-farm research ideas.
And I just wanted to follow up with Jordan as well. We were anticipating that we could have groups of producers applying together, whether it's a producer-led watershed group or an organization, a commodity organization wants to sponsor a group of farmers and help them put together an application, or a co-op, and that it could be that you have, you know, multiple potato growers, different locations that want to run the same trial, or multiple dairy farmers, either in a similar watershed or across the state. Maybe they have different geologic conditions that would be running the same or similar trial.
Excellent. We were anticipating the same exact thing. Thank you.
That's great. Is there anybody? Oh, Steve Richter.
Yeah, Jennifer, just to follow up on that, on this discussion, will there, I'm assuming then there would be flexibility in that. Well, if in watershed group 3 farmers want to go together, would they go together for the $50,000 limit, if depending, I guess, on how many trials they set up, or would each of them have to go in? Would you be going for 150,000? My guess is you would be going for $50,000, but you wouldn't have as many bells and whistles as one farmer might, if only one farmer is getting 50,000 to be used over 2 years.
Yeah, so our concept right now, and this is great for feedback, or if you guys want to think about it and shoot us some emails, that's great too, is that each application would be $50,000. So whether that application was a single farmer or a single agricultural producer, or we define, we'll talk about this later, agricultural producer could be a group, that each application would be $50,000. However, it would be fine for an organization, a watershed, to submit more than one application. So if you were a producer-led group and you wanted to have 2 people on one application and 3 people on a different application, and they're testing different things, that would be acceptable. That's our thoughts right now. But again, that's something we'd be willing to take comments on.
Okay, thanks.
Tomas.
Hi, yeah, it's Tamas, actually.
Tamas, my apologies.
No worries. I have a couple of questions. And the first one, I want to catch Matt before he takes off. We had our research summit for the potato industry recently, and some of the growers are interested in this program, but they're a little concerned with protecting their anonymity. And I know that some of the researchers in attendance at that meeting said you can work through UW Legal to still do these studies and give the farmers some anonymity. But I kind of want some clarification on that and some surety that, you know, whatever they do in this project isn't going to come back and end up in a lawsuit where, hey, we found out that you have 20 parts per million nitrate levels on your farm, and we're going to have the EPA come and enforce on you. That's my first question, is can we provide some form of anonymity for the farms in this project?
Jenny, can I speak to that?
Sure.
In the statute as it was written, any participant in this program, along with any researcher in this program, is relieved of any legal responsibility that came from knowledge gathered in this program.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
That-
that's
your
directly in the
question about-
statute.
Yeah, is it feasible? That's the number one question we get asked is, you know, am I opening myself up here by allowing, you know, but anyway, you just answered that, so that's fine. Second question, can funds be used for technology or equipment on these farms, such as soil moisture sensors or variable rate irrigation systems? That's part A of that question.
Yep, and we will talk about eligible costs in a couple more slides. But yes, equipment is eligible under this grant program.
Okay, and if you're going to address that in a few minutes, I won't get into the other questions about funds for, say, seed and management and all that stuff. You're going to cover that?
We are going to cover that. We just wanted to make sure that we got through Matt's stuff before he had to leave.
Okay, okay. Then I think, yeah, the only other one I had was we just learned about wood chip bioreactors that are being used in Iowa. And the DNR has a program where if there are growers who have tiled fields, they might allow wood chip bioreactors to denitrify the water as it proceeds through the tiles before it gets into the drainage ditches that then go to the rivers. Would that be an eligible project?
So we had a little conversation about that this morning, and at this time, I don't think so. The statute does say the pilot program is for application of commercial fertilizer. So that's how we're reading the statute right now, but we'll make a note that is something of interest for potential future years.
And Jenny, can I jump in too?
Yep.
You know, if we get something like that we might be able to look at that and support that with other grants as well. So if we see some of these thoughts come in, it may not fall under this grant, but we might be able to catch it under others. Is that, I don't know, I'm not putting it on the spot, but we'll have to look at some of those as we relate to the emergency rule as we go back and look at that.
Yep. I know we have just a couple minutes left for Matt. We have a question from John Jones and then one from Sarah. John, would you like to go?
Sure, just a quick question. Is there a kind of a long-term plan for data aggregation and use on the response data statewide, kind of similar to what like Castellano and Premier Cropping Systems are doing in Iowa?
Well, I mean, I think and I'm happy to talk about this later, but we're just still getting this going, John. So
yep.
we have that's some of our interest at UW is to build the data set and have this public available data set.
That's what I was going to say too, is we're still working out some of the finer details, but that of course would be one of our goals of the program is to, you know, that's one of the reasons we really want to have some standardized data that we have all participants collect so that we can make this research be very meaningful for everyone. And then Sarah Walling had a question in the chat about whether or not the research designs could be applied to specialty crops.
I don't see why not. Yeah, I didn't necessarily write this with corn in mind if we wrote corn or if we implied it was just corn, but I mean, obviously that's a major crop, but yeah, it's gonna be done for any crop that requires nitrogen.
Okay. I think we have reached 1:30 and Matt has to say farewell. So we do appreciate your time, Matt, and there will probably be some follow-up questions that we'll be sending your way.
I was gonna say, yeah, if there's anything else I can follow with later, please let me know.
Yep. So to the others on the call, please feel free to continue asking the questions and we will collect them and send them to our scientific and technical experts as we need to. we did get a couple other comments in the chat. One related to rethinking the 50,000 per application. That perhaps if we have multiple producers studying the same thing, we could have a larger amount in our application. So we'll make note of that comment. Can the recent announcement of an NRCS grant program we'll have to look into this NRCS RCPP program with the money available for nutrient management. I'm not super familiar with that right now, so I will make note of that and look into it, Steve. Before we move on to the other slides, are there any other comments or questions about the research design options? Do you think that this will be attractive to producers, provide them, something that's feasible for this first round of grants and meaningful?
I would like to say that in talking about this with our potato growers, there was one grower who, really believes in the project, but thinks it needs to be very large. It needs to be on a 40-acre field because so many of our small plot research projects don't necessarily translate to commercial farming. And so I would just say, let's make sure we can conduct these projects on a large scale and, at least do a 40-acre field or consider doing trials within a 40-acre field.
Okay. And that may be something that if it turns out that, research design option A and B work for most people, if that producer wants to participate, they should certainly send in a proposal under option C, which would say, hey, I want to do a rate study, but I want to do it on 40 acres or 80 acres. And that would certainly be welcome. Margaret?
Thank you. I know that in our watershed group in the Southwest, we've had in the last 2 or 3 years a remarkable increase in interest in grass-based systems. Just farmers who are saying, well, I might take one pasture and renovate it and put it into some pasture. And so I'm just curious, that's going to be the question that I get, I think, more than any other that hasn't already been answered. So I'm wondering, is this applicable to grass-based systems or is it strictly row crop systems?
That may be one of those technical questions I have to send to Matt. I believe it would be applicable to it, or you could propose something under the innovative approach of how you would be designing something to optimize commercial nitrogen in a grass-based system. So
Matt's still on the call, I think. I don't think he's quite left yet.
Okay, so we can in my side of the I don't know, whatever my little part of the shop, it's just how the experiments could or should be conducted, right? To put that in place. I have it's really about commercial fertilizer management and whatever cropping system. So I personally, I don't know, I don't view, well, I think that's for DATCP to decide on which cropping systems, so.
okay.
I think, Jenny, this is Tim. I think we're looking at across all cropping systems from.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I just be clear? I'm sorry to say this one more time, but across cropping systems or across all farming systems? Would it include pasture in your mind, Tim? Just so I know, it doesn't need to, I'm not trying to push that it should, I'm just asking, so I know it'll be the question that I get.
Are you applying commercially sourced nitrate?
Some of the farmers would be.
Okay. I would say we'd have to go back and look at it. I don't think that question has really been brought up. I think it's a good one. We can get back with that one. I don't want to give you an absolute answer, but I think that's we've talked about cropping, and I don't think I just want to go back and read the rule on that one, but I think that that's definitely an option.
Thank you.
Welcome.
This is Matt again. Can I just jump in real quick before I do step off? I think the way we created this was that the first level of engagement and maybe the easiest entry into on-farm nitrogen assessment is what we put as option 1, option 2. But I mean, I know a lot of you on the call here, and I know a lot of you have the ability to do next level things. So those are always on the table. And of course, what we're really, there's tremendous interest in all this stuff and doing a lot of outside the box stuff as well. So that's definitely on the table, and we're ready to engage on that. So it's about like, what's the easiest entry point to some of this work is what we've tried to capture in 1 and 2. The innovative stuff in number 3, option C, then that could be anything in my mind.
Yep, I agree, Matt. I think what we're trying to propose is something that there's an option for any farmer who hasn't been involved in a research study before to be eligible for this grant and learn about their farm, learn about, optimizing commercial nitrogen. But there are going to be people at different levels, so we wanted to make sure that we had available opportunities for anybody to participate in this grant opportunity.
And I apologize, I do have to step off, but thanks everyone.
Yep. We have one more comment in the chat, and then we'll have a comment from Sarah before we move on. Jennifer Hauser in the chat was wondering about if wetlands on or adjacent to the farm could be incorporated into a project, the effect of which could be more N uptake. Yes, that would definitely fit as a possible option C, innovative design option. Sarah.
Thanks, Jenny. I guess backing up a little bit to the research designs overall, and maybe the question maybe for what the innovative bucket looks like is, given that this project is, this bill was created in addition to the cover crop rebate program on the heels of the Speaker's Task Force for Water Quality, I'm curious where within the research designs would fit some research proposals that might actually look to quantify the losses both to leaching and nitrous oxide emissions, et cetera. And if the UW has been able to help come up with any sort of template research designs to be able to help farmers that are interested in looking at that quantification more than what the NUE calculations can get you to, for those, where those losses and uses are going a little bit more. I think that's an area that I know was somewhat of a goal of the program when it was first being discussed a couple of years back, is how we get at that kind of the groundwater impact component of nitrogen use.
I think that's one of those technical scientific questions we'll have to write down and talk to our friends at UW about, but we will.
Well, Jenny, I can talk about it a little bit if you want. This is Amber.
Amber, great.
Yeah, so Sarah, that's a great question. So I think right now, in the infancy of this, the approach would be to try to make like companion studies. So like Discovery Farms is starting to install pan lysimeters and kind of a network of farms around the state to try to get at nitrogen leaching. And, so like that part could potentially be like a companion study, right? So like this can be occurring in tandem with the studies that are occurring over those pan lysimeters to try to kind of evaluate, both things at once, both the surface things, yield and all of that kind of stuff, and then the leaching. In the way the grants are written right now, I don't know that there'd be like enough money for a group to like apply to install monitoring equipment. Perhaps some of the like nitrous oxide pieces you mentioned are cheaper. I don't know for sure. And then I think you kind of made mention of like template designs. I think it's really important that what's included in like the RFP would be some like themes or research questions that farmers could say like, yep, I want to participate in that one. And then be able to have a network of those around the state in different locations so that there would be some things kind of like already ready to go that people could participate in instead of just having to make their own choices about what they want to evaluate. So being able to have both, I think, is important.
Great, thank you, Amber. And Amber may be able to chime in if there's some additional questions for UW on this call. I don't see any other hands up related to the research design options. You can always feel free to add some stuff in the chat or ask a question if we get further down the road in our presentation. We have about 20 minutes left, so I do want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about our eligible costs and eligible producers and things like that, make sure everybody has a chance to comment on some of that stuff. So who is eligible for the grant program? This is really a grant program for agricultural producers per the statute. So in our emergency rule, we did define an agricultural producer as both an individual farmer or a group of farmers, each of whom operates an eligible farm. We also have made it so that agricultural producers may collaborate with a legal entity for project management purposes, including completing the application. And there may be some questions about what a legal entity is. We have to provide our money to somebody that can receive money. So let's say it was a producer-led group that hadn't formed officially as a 501c3 or an official nonprofit. They're already collaborating with groups like Michael Fields or a county, or in this case, for this, it could be that the potato and vegetable growers is the collaborating entity and helps their producers submit an application. Or it could be that a cooperative collaborates, or an independent agronomist is the collaborator. So who is eligible is the money, and the grant is actually for the producer, but we're really trying to broaden it so that it can be an individual, a group, or really encouraging that collaboration with another entity. And then we just have the definition of an eligible farm. This is one that's commonly used. It's in our statutes for our other programs. So that's who's eligible for the program. Next slide. And what are eligible costs? So this has come up a couple times. We have very broad eligible costs in this program because we really wanted to make sure that producers would be able to do these innovative studies. So eligible costs for the funding would be personnel for a coordinator role, including expenses for salaries and wages, consulting services, and travel. So if a producer or group is collaborating with somebody to help administer the funds could be used to help pay for some of those management costs. Incentive or stipend payments to agricultural producers who participate. So we are thinking that we would allow, just for participating, because we're using the farmer's expertise and time and land, giving a payment just to participate in the program. Also, there are those zero-in strips that will need to be in there. So providing some sort of payment for those zero nitrogen plots that will be in the test. Water quality monitoring, soil testing that will need to be done as a part of the study. There's project monitoring support up to 20% of each grant that will go to the University of Wisconsin system. Rental payments for equipment. We're also allowing equipment purchases necessary for project implementation. And this is a little different than some of our grant programs, which usually don't allow equipment purchases. In the emergency rule, it did say that needed to be pre-approved. And we did get some comments about that during the public hearing that, hey, we're submitting a budget, that should be the approval. So if the equipment purchases and the equipment that would be purchased is listed in your budget that you submit as part of the grant, and we approve of the grant, that constitutes the pre-approval. If you just put something in the budget like equipment and didn't list what it is, then we would need to approve it if it's over the $2,500 cost. And then other materials and services that might be needed to run these studies that would include agronomy services, including custom application nutrient management planning, and cover crop seed. So those are the types of things. Those are exactly what's in from the emergency rule. There might be some additional questions about it. I can't remember the next slide. You want to go to the next slide? So our discussion questions for this are a couple of them. Are there other expenses that we didn't mention that we should consider as being eligible? And then we've been talking about some different stipends that might be attractive, and we're wondering to hear from you what would be an attractive stipend to agricultural producers to participate this and to cover their yield losses. Okay, so and Jordan, we will definitely have the PowerPoint posted online after the meeting. We can send you that slide. Bob.
So the stipend is a nice idea, but I have I have a sort of a corollary question. Can the farmer put down their own labor as a cost? Not some consultant they're paying, but they have time they're going to put into perhaps checking the monitoring or varying their planting, that kind of stuff.
Yes, I mean, in our producer-led program, we do allow that as well. There's a limit on it, and I think our draft RFP includes a limit. We'd certainly like some comments about that. I think it's like $25 an hour is what producer-led has as their limit, but that would certainly be fine for them to list their own time as a cost.
Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, I need clarification on University of Wisconsin's role in this project, and maybe Amber or others could help. I wasn't under the assumption that they would be out on every site doing the monitoring and say collecting data, mainly because I don't know if they have the capacity to do that if there are 20 or more such projects a year. I thought that would be done like under the expense of the farmer, like they would be hiring their private agronomist to help collect data, et cetera, et cetera. So I need to get clarified on that. UW's role and then various costs for that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve, and Amber, maybe you can jump in after me. So this is one that we're continuing to have discussions about. The statute does say that UW has a role in monitoring, and that a portion of each grant, up to 20%, will go to UW for those purposes. We are planning at DATCP to do a single contract with UW to help provide those services. But we're still kind of working out the finer details. It could be that UW helps provide some training on what needs to be collected, or just provides, here's what we need to have collected, here's how it needs to be done. And that's done through the independent agronomist. It may differ based on the applicant, if it's an applicant, just on his or her own applying versus somebody working with an independent agronomist. So those are some of the details that we still need to work out on how the UW role is going to unfold. Is there anything you want to add at this time, Amber?
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly right. So what I'm understanding right now is that some of the UW roles would be, like Jenny mentioned, like training, providing those protocols or example templates for people to participate in, providing like technical assistance on like when sampling should be done and what needs to be done, and then aggregating the data, storing the data, analyzing the data, helping to provide some of the like outreach and education pieces of that. So there are quite a few different roles for UW, and I think that you're absolutely right, Steve. We do not have the capacity to have like to make that commitment to say like, well, we will collect every sample. I think so the regional crops educators might play a role in some of the projects in helping with that. We have some regional outreach specialists around the state now too, but I think your synopsis of like having the farmer work with his agronomist or the co-op or things like that to like really get those actual field pieces done is what we hope for
Okay.
as well.
I'm going to do a couple comments in the chat and then we'll have Sarah make a comment. We have a comment that the farmer stipend should cover a comparable land rental rate for the affected acreage and also cover the extra time involved for things like planting. Steve has a link for the RCCP announcement. Bill Stangl put in a piece from the producer-led rule that does prohibit equipment purchases, and our emergency rule for this program, even though it's in the same ATCP 52, it's a separate section of 52, and our emergency rule does allow equipment purchases with some limitations. One of the limitations was the pre-approval of equipment over $2,500. And again, if it's listed in the budget, and we approve it as part of the grant, there won't be any additional approval needed. But if you just, if maybe the applicant isn't quite sure yet exactly what they might do, it just has a line item called equipment, then we would request them to come back and get the specifics approved. Sarah.
Yeah, I just had a question actually. While I fully, I respect the capacity of UW-Madison to take on some of these. What if somebody wants to work with a entity out of Green Bay or Milwaukee? I know has some focused efforts to look at these kinds of questions as well with their research teams. So how does that work with the one contract? Is there still a possibility for farmers who have a relationship with one of the system schools to work with those professors?
I think that's definitely possible, and there certainly is no, there's nothing against, even if they want to submit an application with a professor, that would certainly be allowed as well. The professor could be the collaborating entity. Again, we're still kind of working out the details with the UW, so we will provide more information about that later.
Thanks.
Are there any other thoughts about the eligible expenses or the stipend? Do people feel like we've covered the types of things that will be expenses in this and still make it attractive for producers to participate? You will notice that there is no match requirement in this grant program, which is different than some of our grant programs. However, match is certainly always welcome, and projects that include a match might score a little bit better if there's demand that exceeds the amount available for grants. Okay, Bob.
What you just said is very important, that we let applicants know that.
Okay.
Because otherwise they may have a match and just not bother to put it in because they didn't know it's going to be part of the score.
Perfect. We did get a comment that most farmers' time is worth more than $25 an hour. We'll note that. Okay, I don't see any other hands up or comments right now. So Alex, do you want to go to the next slide? Okay, well, Tim's going to take over from here.
All right. I kind of alluded to the last two slides at the very beginning. Next steps. So here's a very high level timeline for us. So after this meeting today, this call, we're going to continue and take the comments and work on program development. One of the questions we had is, we put in here sharing a draft RFP, including application form and scoring criteria for feedback. Would you guys like that out there to do? After that, if that occurs, release of an RFP for approximately 1 month. And at that point too, is you guys, there's been a lot of questions on this. It's a brand new program. We want to put out a webinar, a public information webinar to help educate any potential applicants. The cost share would be something that would be definitely highlighted in this. And so we want to make sure we have that piece available, and we're going to do that as well. Then after that, we're going to close the RFP after about a month. Projects awarded would be in late fall. We'd work on contracts finalizing up over the 2022, 2023 over that time period. And then we'd like to see projects start after contracts are signed in late winter, early spring. So as I asked at the beginning, is this a timeline that will work for producers and the ag community?
Bob.
Yeah, I'm not shy today. I think
That's good.
I think the timeline to get the contracts finalized, I understand that there is a deadline, but I think 1 month from RFP release to conclusion is not enough time when a farmer has to find a UW collaborator within that month. That's why the easier we make it to find collaborators, the better it's going to be. And then, yes, share the RFP and application form as quick as you can, because then we can get it out to our members.
Yep.
And help make that month easier.
Well, I see that, if we share that draft, it helps get the word out a little bit. And so people see what might be needed. And so, yes, we can do that. It sounds like a couple people have said agree. Yep, on both counts. So good. So we'll do that. For us, it just adds steps, and we want to make sure that, I think the goal is to have it out so everybody can start in the spring, correct?
Yep. Yeah, so that we can start the projects in the
Yep.
spring.
Trying to read the chats as they fly by too, as I'm talking. So, okay. So I think I got a astounding, sounds good. I got yeses for both questions then. So, okay. So we're going to get that out here to this listserv, to the folks on here shortly, and we'll continue down this next steps. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
couple questions in the chat. So
Thank you, Jenny.
somebody asked if a project with cover crops be started this fall in anticipation of getting funded. Yeah, some things need to be done in the fall, and we definitely heard that earlier this year that we were going to be a little late for people that wanted to do cover crops as part of their management study. The projects do have to be at least 2 years. So that may be something that the funds are granted and they have to start the following fall. So really this spring and summer is kind of planning for something that would start in the following fall. If the contracts get done in time and we just, it looks like we have some things we need to go back and think about. There could potentially be some soil sampling done this fall, but otherwise we can do that in the spring before the projects as well. Bill Stangl said, consider keeping the RFP open until funds are depleted. Some projects may begin later in the summer. Yep, we have talked about that we could either potentially do a second round of grants if there isn't enough demand this first round, that by having the first RFP come out this fall, that would give us an opportunity to have a second round if the funds aren't depleted. So we are thinking about that. Yes, the funding needs to be obligated by May of 2023. So that is one of our challenges. Sarah asked that question, is the funds do not roll over into the following fiscal year. So we do have to have all 1.6 million obligated by May of 2023. So that's one of our challenges that we do have. Those are all the questions in the chat, Tim.
Excellent. Thank you for pausing and looking at those. I was trying to read them as they were running. Great suggestions. Let's go to the last slide. We are right at time, and I knew we kind of would be. First off, there's two questions here. And I think we've already talked about some of these ways. What are the best ways to promote the grant opportunity? We're going to continue to, we'll start putting thing up on the website. We'll use our Gov Delivery outreach to the associations and folks. Are there other ways we can help promote this? I think Bill. Oh, okay. So we are at the end of time. So I think you've got the two questions here. I want to be very respectful on time. And if you've got thoughts, let's go to the last slide. Susan Mockert is going to take all of any comments or suggestions, any feedback. If you've got thoughts after this meeting, or if there are thoughts you didn't share today, please send them to her directly. And she's kind of the main person for the RFP and applications. And so if you've got questions, please send them to her. Does anybody want the last minute or so here to make a comment or suggestion?
So our follow-up, Tim, is that we've recorded this and we will put it on our website, have that available for people, and then we'll have the RFP available, the draft RFP available for comment.
Yep.
Which we will send out probably next week.
Soon, yes.
Soon.
I want to thank everybody for their time and interest today and participating. With no other comments, I just want to hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.